Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
So not only do I think the Western Conference Finals is going to be tough to predict, I think the Western Conference is going to be tougher to predict than March Madness. And there are multiple reasons. We have some of the most talented players that this basketball era has ever seen. We have some of the most juggernaut teams at the top of the Western Conference. And then we have young generational talent sitting at the bottom. There are truly 12 to 13 teams, in my opinion, that could make a playoff run in any other season except this one. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put myself through hell and give you guys my way too early Western Conference predictions. So I want to do this in tiers. I want to do this in tiers such as who are playoff locks, who are contenders, who are playing teams, and who are my lottery teams. And when I tell you I've made this list about 4 or 5 times and really sat on it and really tried to figure out what I'm going to do, I think it's just time. And later in the offseason, we're going to dive deep into every single NBA team, dropping a video every single day on all 30 NBA teams. But as of right now, I want to talk about my teams who are lottery teams. And those 4 teams are the Houston Rockets, the San Antonio Spurs, the Utah Jazz, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Portland Trail Blazers and the Utah Jazz really fast. I think the Portland Trail Blazers and the Utah Jazz are the 2 teams in the Western Conference who I see no chance of making the playoffs. I think the Portland Trail Blazers are a very good young team. They bring in Danny Advia. They drafted Donovan Clingan. You still have Shaedon Sharp, Anthony Simons, and Scoot Henderson to look forward to. But in the end of the day, I still think they're waiting on that one young player to really blossom. And what I mean by that is Anthony Simons has been nice, but he has been on the trade block. Shaedon Sharp has looked good, but he was not healthy this season. Scoot Henderson had an underwhelming rookie season. And while these guys look like they can be young pieces that can really build towards a championship, you kind of have an overlap at the guard position where you're going to want to figure out who are your guys moving forward and who you can move off of. But also on top of that, you have guys like DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, and Jeremy Grant that can be moved as well. And I just think it's a whole bunch of cluster of you don't know what you have, you want to figure out what you have, you don't want to figure it out too late, and then some guys get unmovable. Because you can stun Anthony Simons' growth or Shaedon Sharp's growth trying to really push towards Scoot Henderson, and then you can't get his full trade value. But in my opinion, I would think the guy is Scoot Henderson. You spent your number 3 pick on him. This is the guy that assured you that you can trade Damian Lillard. And I think Scoot Henderson's athleticism, his playmaking, the way he can get downhill, I think he's going to be a very good player. We all just have to wait and see. Now we're going to talk about the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz is a type of team that have the perfect foundational players around them. Walker Kessler is still a solid player. He did not make the jump in his second season that everybody thought he would, but he's still a very solid defender. You have guys like Cody Williams, who I think is going to be a very good complementary player. You still have Colin Sexton, and then there's Keontae George. I think this team is waiting for the guy, and I think they're going to get that in the 2025 NBA draft. And with the talent that is loaded in this draft class, I do not see them trying to win. Now let's talk about the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs. I would not be surprised if either one of these teams found their way into the playoffs this season. With Victor Wembanyama, you just watch him and be like, this guy may just be the best player in the league one day. With how gifted he is on the offensive and defensive side of the ball, I can see him averaging 35 points per game and still being the best defender in the league. And then when we look at the Houston Rockets, Alperen Sengun made a fantastic jump this season. Reed Shepherd looks like one of the best rookies out of Summer League. Jalen Green just had an amazing stretch towards the end of the season. You still have Jabari Smith. You still have Amen Thompson. There are a lot of young players to the point where they can make that leap and be one of the best teams in the league. And then you have an amazing head coach in Ime Udoka. But if this was the Eastern Conference, I would give them a play-in spot. But this is the Western Conference, and there are still 8 other teams that have to get a spot. And there's going to be some fan bases that are just upset with where their teams are placed. And while I think the Houston Rockets are a very good team, I think they have a very bright future. With how tough the Western Conference is going to be this year, you may really just have to fall back on being a lottery team this year. And once again, with how young this team is, I think their average age is 23.6. You are okay with that. You know that there are some years behind this team, and you're going to have to really stick through it to be a top tier team, which I think is in their future. Now we're going to talk about my playing teams, which are the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Sacramento Kings. And when I look at it, there's one out of these 4 teams that got better this offseason. The Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Clippers both lost some of their franchise guys to free agency. And the Los Angeles Lakers really sat on their hands all offseason. And to start with the Warriors, we clearly saw that Steph Curry is not in the same stage to be able to carry this tier of team to a playoff run. And therefore, you guys still don't want to give up Brandon Podsminga, if I'm saying his name correctly, or Jonathan Kuminga to get a 25-point-per-game type of guy in Lauri Markkanen. Draymond Green cannot stay on the floor, and it's not even injuries, it's him being suspended. Steve Kerr obviously wants to hold on to the young talent but does not want to play the young talent. Your young talent does not look good enough to be able to wield you into a playoff spot or take you on a deep run. And I feel as though if you have Steph Curry and Draymond Green who you're still paying top dollar to, you have to move on their type of time. And what I mean move on their type of time, it's time to build a championship roster around this team, or just to give Steph a shot at winning another championship in his later years of his career. Instead, you guys have not done that. And when I look at teams in the past that have really let go of their franchise guys, they have all gotten rewarded. Russell Westbrook leaves the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now the Thunder are championship favorites with still the brightest future in the NBA. The Boston Celtics traded Marcus Smart to bring in Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and they win a championship. The Toronto Raptors traded DeMar DeRozan, and the very next year they were rewarded with a championship. But yet, the Golden State Warriors lose out on Klay Thompson, and now you guys don't have anything. And it's not for effort-wise, because there was a trade for Paul George that was on the market, and the Clippers said no. We will get to them in just a second. But as this team is constructed right now, they can really miss out on a play-in altogether. As for the Los Angeles Lakers, you guys are bringing in a brand new coach in JJ Redick, who has never coached a day in his life, which is not really a strike against him. I still think JJ Redick is a great basketball mind, but we're going to have to see how he really does on the fly with adjustments and being the head coach of probably the most prestigious franchise in basketball. And no matter how much ball you know, that's going to take an effect on being a head coach. On top of that, you have a 40-year-old LeBron James who you're still expecting to be a top-end player, not saying he can't, but you're still expecting him to be a top-end player in order for you guys to win. And when I say the top-end talent is there, you still have LeBron James, you still have Anthony Davis, but the roster around it is lackluster. The Los Angeles Lakers are a team that has not been able to adjust to the new brand of basketball that is being played in the NBA, and it's starting to show. This is why this team has not won over 50 games in 3 to 4 seasons, and they're never really looked at as a championship contender. And when I mean the new brand of basketball that's being brought into the NBA, it's multiple big men in the lineup, it's roster versatility, it's 3-and-D guys. The Lakers are lacking all of that. And when I mean multiple big men in a roster, let's look at some of these teams. The Denver Nuggets have the best big men in the league. The Oklahoma City Thunder have 2 to 3 big men they can throw out in a rotation. So do the Minnesota Timberwolves. So do the Dallas Mavericks. The Boston Celtics have multiple big men they can throw out. They have multiple 3-and-D players that they can put in a roster. They have multiple lineups they can put out and still have a positive net rating. And these are all things that the Los Angeles Lakers are lacking. And LeBron James taking a pay cut this offseason, or attempting to take a pay cut so they can sign better players, is a good move. But there were also a lot of players that could have been brought in to make this team a lot better. There's still some players that can be brought in to be made a lot better. There's Jeremy Grant you can go trade for. Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith are still on the market. You can still sign Luke Kennard. You missed out on Gary Trent. These guys would have been a lot better than I think a Klay Thompson signing. If you could have got 2 or 3 of those guys to bring in and fill out a roster spot and to really be a little bit more deep walking into the season, I feel as though that would have been a lot better than just grabbing one Klay Thompson. Instead, Rob Pelinka sat on his hands. They did not get any better this offseason. And in my opinion, if you're not getting better while majority of the teams in the Western Conference are getting better around you, you're not getting better, you're getting worse. And just expecting a 40-year-old LeBron James to really shoulder the weight and get you into a play in the playoffs in this Western Conference, it's very risky. And we all know Anthony Davis just had his most healthy season in a very long time. But do you really want to depend on that with Anthony Davis's injury history? And I'm just saying right now, the Los Angeles Lakers are very lucky to have that top-end talent, or they would not be a playing team to me. Next, we're going to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers. We have guys like James Harden and Kawhi Leonard who are on a fast downfall in their careers, and the roster around it is pretty meh. You get Norman Powell, you have Derrick Jones Jr., you still have Ivan Zubac, but I feel like this roster is really more made to sell tickets more than to win games. Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are always going to get butts and seats, but are they going to put wins on the calendar as of now? We're talking about a guy in Kawhi Leonard who cannot stay healthy. Yes, he had a very healthy season this year, but it's a contract year. He's trying to get that extension. As soon as he got that extension, he did not play in the playoffs. And then they let Paul George walk basically for nothing instead of trading him to the Golden State Warriors, and you could have gotten Jonathan Kuminga, a young piece that could have helped your franchise. And now they have no picks in the future, and they really don't have any picks for the foreseeable future. This is going to get very ugly before it gets pretty for the Los Angeles Clippers. And the next team I want to talk about is the Sacramento Kings. This is a team that definitely got better with the signing of DeMar DeRozan. I just don't know how much the defense is going to really impact their team, especially winning. And I don't know how DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis play together, because if you watch the games, it looks like DeMar DeRozan and Domantas Sabonis kind of work in the same area, which is that mid-range area, and you don't want these guys to step on their toes. Mike Brown is a very good coach. I think he'll be able to figure something out, but this is not something I see as being a playoff team, especially in a contending team or a contending Western Conference. And the next three teams I will be talking about is my playoff locks, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies, the New Orleans Pelicans, and the Phoenix Suns. Now, to talk about the Phoenix Suns real quick, this is a team that was very bad in clutch offense last year, but they still had one of the better offenses in the league. They have a lot of guys who can contribute on the offensive end, and they drafted the best perimeter defender in the entire draft, which is Ryan Dunn, of course. And one of the things that they were lacking of last year was the point guard. And now you bring in two competent point guards, one that can run your second unit and one that can run the starters. And Tyus Jones is the type of guy who can set the table for guys like Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and Kevin Durant. Tyus Jones last year averaged 7 assists to 1 turnover. He was top 10 in assists per game. And if you ask me, I think you can start Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Royce O'Neal, Kevin Durant, and Yusuf Nurkic. And there have been talks that Grayson Allen could be on the move. You know who's a perfect guy to go get that? Dorian Finney-Smith. So let's say if that trade goes through, you now have Tyus Jones, Devin Booker, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kevin Durant, and Yusuf Nurkic. You also have a lot of great players off your bench, especially if Bradley Beal is okay with coming off the bench. You now have a second unit of Monte Morris, Bradley Beal, Ryan Dunn, Mason Plumlee, and you also have, I'm forgetting his name. And let's not get it confused, the Suns are still one of the most talented teams in the NBA, especially at the top of their roster. I think what they're missing now is just a rim protecting big. But now that they have a true point guard in Tyus Jones, I expect their clutch offense to be a lot better this season. Next team we're going to be talking about is the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I know a lot of people, including myself, was not high on Zach Edey coming into the draft. I did not like the move of drafting him at 9. I felt as though they could have traded back. But Zach Edey is going to be a very pivotal role, or is going to have a very pivotal role on this Grizzlies team this coming up season. Zach Edey is a guy who's going to grab rebounds, he's going to protect the rim, and he's going to set amazing screens for Ja Morant. We saw this in Summer League, how he can defend the rim, how he's an amazing screener. He set up some very good screens for Scottie Pippen Jr. And things like that as a big man is very important, especially with the space he can create for Ja Morant. I would not be surprised if Zach Edey is starting by the All-Star weekend. And you also have Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr., who are two former Defensive Player of the Years. And Desmond Bane is coming off probably his best season of his career with Ja Morant, who was a top 15 player in the league. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are probably going to have a 5 or 6 seed type of year, and that's very good for a Western Conference this year. Next up, we're going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. I think they're still looking for a deal for Brandon Ingram. It would be very nice to send him to a team that has maybe one too many centers, and you can bring in a center to pair next to Zion Williamson. I don't know why, but I think the Blazers are screaming at this, especially with the 3 big men they have, but that's another trade for another day. I think they have the potential to be one of the best defending teams in the league. I think Yves Missi has the potential to be a Clint Capella-like defender at the NBA level. And I think DeJounte Murray and Herb Jones can be one of the best defensive backcourts in the league. You also have guys like Trey Murphy and Jose Alvarado coming off your bench. And I expect Jordan Hawkins to get some very significant minutes this season. This Pelicans team is one of the better rosters in the league, and yet they're still not in my top 4. And now we're going to talk about the contenders. Starting off, we're going to talk about the Western Conference champion Dallas Mavericks. Now, if you're not high on the Western Conference champion Dallas Mavericks, I want you to stick around and watch this video. The Dallas Mavericks were 15-2 after the trade deadline, or later into the season, I don't know for sure, and they have made some very significant improvements to their roster. They brought in Klay Thompson, who in my opinion would have pushed that Celtics series to maybe 6 or 7 games. Because if we look at the numbers, PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. shot under 25% from above the break threes and wide open threes, while Klay Thompson is 38% from above the break threes, 38% from pull-ups, and 41% on wide open threes. They do miss out on a lot of defense and on Derrick Jones Jr., but they also bring in Najee Marshall, who is a phenomenal perimeter defender. Luka Doncic is probably my lock to win MVP this season. Kyrie Irving is bringing in another year. And Derek Lively is going to make a significant jump this season, as I think he's going to be the main starting center. I can truly see the Dallas Mavericks winning between 54 and 58 games this season. Now let's talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the best defense in the league. They're going to be the best defense in the league this season. And with Anthony Edwards coming off of his breakout playoff run, and they also drafted Rob Dillingham, who I think is going to be perfect sitting behind Mike Conley for a season, I think they're going to make a significant jump. I still don't really trust their half-court offense, especially in the regular season, but they showed in the playoffs that can be improved. And not only on top of drafting Robert Dillingham, they also drafted Terrence Shannon Jr., who can be a spark plug off the bench. And now let's talk about the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets did lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in free agency, but Mike Malone is still one of the best coaches in the league, and Nikola Jokic is, in fact, the best player in the league. I don't think the loss of KCP is really going to deter this team from being a top-tier team in the Western Conference into falling out of that tier. They can still run an amazing offense with Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic, and you can also bring in Christian Brown to be that starting two-guard who shot 38% from three in the playoffs. And as a defender, he is not KCP level, but he is no slouch on defense either. And there's always a stretch from the Denver Nuggets where it's maybe in between mid-third quarter to early fourth quarter where they just get anything they want. And that's because Nikola Jokic is probably the hardest player to guard in the NBA. I can see the Denver Nuggets winning at least 52 to 55 games this season. And now let's talk about my Western Conference favorite, the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder got better in everywhere they were lacking last season. The Thunder lacked big man depth. Okay, let's bring in Isaiah Hartenstein. They lack spacing in a starting lineup with Josh Giddey. Okay, let's trade him for Alex Caruso. And the best part that I like about the Oklahoma City Thunder is they have a very versatile roster. They have rosters that can go out and beat the Celtics. They have rosters that can go out and beat the Timberwolves. They have a roster they can throw out and beat the Nuggets. They have a roster they can throw out and beat the Dallas Mavericks. And I think Jalen Williams is going to make his first All-Star game this season. Only on top of that, you have an amazing amount of picks. You also drafted Nikola Topic, who is probably a top 3 player in this draft had he not got injured. And you have SGA, who is a consensus top 8 player in the league. This is a team next to the Boston Celtics, in my opinion, that have no weakness. So to wrap this up, here are my final standings for the Western Conference. At number 1, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then on the 2 seed, I have the Dallas Mavericks. The 3 seed, I have the Denver Nuggets. The 4 seed, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. At the 5 seed, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. The 6th seed, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. The 7th seed, I have the Phoenix Suns. The 8th seed, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. The 9th seed, I have the Sacramento Kings. 10, Golden State Warriors. The 11th seed, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. The 12th seed, I have the Houston Rockets. The 13th seed, I have the San Antonio Spurs. The 14th seed, I have the Utah Jazz. And at the 15th seed, I have the Portland Trailblazers. Like I said, the Western Conference is probably going to be just as tough to predict as March Madness this coming season. If you guys have anything you can disagree with, feel free to put it in the comments. I'm always down to debate. And if you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Eastern Conference will be coming out in a few days. And I'm out. Peace.